I went to a funeral recently, and it wasn't like the ones I usually go to.
Yeah.
It was in a park, like outside on a nice day. The birds were singing, and there was this celebrant right in the middle of it all. They were telling stories about the person who died, little funny things that really made you feel like you knew them.
A park. That's different.
Yeah, it really was. There was music that they liked, poems they enjoyed. It wasn't like sad or religious at all. It was really more like a celebration of their life. And it got me thinking about, funeral directors. How could working with celebrants like this make services even better? What benefits do you see in that?
That's interesting. I think maybe the biggest thing would be being able to offer something more personal. You know what I mean? It seems like celebrants are all about making the service fit the person no matter what they believed in.
That's it. And speaking of beliefs, what I got from that funeral was that celebrants aren't tied to any religion, which I think is a big difference between them and like a priest or a pastor.
Yeah, that's true. They seem to be more focused on showing who the person really was rather than following a set script.
Exactly. They include things like special music or poems, readings, even rituals that meant something to the person. So how do you think that flexibility helps a funeral home in a practical way?
Well, for one thing, it lets funeral homes work with all kinds of families, even those who aren't religious or want something less traditional.
That makes sense. And it seems like it would make people happier overall when families feel like their loved one's personality and wishes were really respected. It's got to create a better experience.
Definitely, word of mouth is so important in this business, and a truly personalized service could really make a difference.
And I've read that having a celebrant can even be another way for funeral homes to make money, which is something to consider.
True, you can work their fees into your pricing. So let's say you like this idea and want to find a celebrant to work with. What do you do first?
Well, from what I've learned, it's really important to think about their experience and training. You want someone with a good track record, maybe even certifications from places like the Insight Institute or the Celebrant Foundation and Institute. What do you think about that?
Those certifications are important, for sure. They show the celebrant has had the right training and follows certain rules. But I think communication skills are just as important. They're working with families who are going through a hard time, so being understanding and a good listener is really important.
Absolutely. They need to be able to connect with people and make them feel comfortable sharing their stories.
And their values should match up with the funeral homes, too. Being ethical, caring about people, and giving personalized service. It's a partnership, so you have to be on the same page.
Couldn't agree more. So let's say you've found the perfect celebrant. How do you actually make their services a part of funeral home?
Well, the first thing is to let people know you offer it. Put it on your website, in your brochures, just get the word out.
Right. Tell families about the good things about having a celebrant and how it can make the service more personal.
Exactly. And it's also important to have clear communication with the celebrant. Make sure they know how things work at the funeral home.
That's important for things to go smoothly. What about supporting the celebrant over time? Do you think that's a good idea?
For sure. It's a partnership, not a one-time thing. Give them resources, training, even feedback on how they're doing.
And make sure to ask families who have used their services for their feedback to make sure everyone's happy. But even with all these good things, some families might not be sure about having a celebrant. What kinds of things come to mind?
Some families might have religious reasons for not wanting one. They might worry it's not right for someone with strong beliefs.
How would you deal with that?
I think it's important to say that celebrants can include religious parts in the service if the family wants that.
So it's not about replacing religion, but adding another level of personal touch.
Yeah, and some families might just not know what a celebrant is. So explaining things clearly and giving examples can help.
Show them how a celebrant can create a really special and meaningful tribute.
Exactly. And of course, there's the cost. Some families might worry about the extra money.
Being upfront about the fees is key. Help families understand how those services fit into their budget.
Right. Communication is so important in every part of this.
It seems like having a celebrant isn't just some fad. It's a way to offer a kinder, more personal way of doing funeral services. It's about honoring the individual and their story.
I agree. It's about understanding that there's no one right way to grieve and remember someone.
And giving families the power to create a service that's real and meaningful to them.
I've been giving a lot of thought to this whole celebrant thing. It's really kind of cool, the idea of being able to offer such personal services. It's pretty different from the usual way funerals are done, don't you think?
Yeah, it is. But I think it shows how things are changing. What families want and need these days.
Right. It seems like more and more people want services that are, about the person and their life. not just the same old thing.
So where do we even start looking for the right celebrant for a funeral home?
Finding the right person is super important. It's got to be a good fit, kind of like with any partnership, right? Like their personality, their approach, their values should all kind of click.
Well, one way to start is by reaching out to professional organizations, like you mentioned before, the Insight Institute or the Celebrant Foundation and Institute. They often have lists of certified celebrants.
So they're a good resource for finding qualified people. That's helpful. Are there other ways to find them too?
Of course, word of mouth is always good.
Yeah.
Talk to other funeral directors in your area, see if they have any recommendations from their own experiences.
Yeah, getting a personal referral is always a good idea. I bet online research could be helpful too.
Oh, definitely. Lots of celebrants have their own websites or online profiles. You can check those out to learn about their background, their experience, what kind of style they have.
So once we've got a few names, what's next?
Time to reach out and schedule interviews. That's when you can really dig in, their experience, how they go about creating a service, their whole philosophy on being a celebrant.
Okay, so the interview process is key.
Gotcha. What are some good questions to ask them?
We want to get a sense of how much experience they have. So ask about how long they've been doing this, the kinds of services they've done, if they're familiar with different cultures and religions.
So we're looking for someone who can handle different situations and adapt to what families need.
Exactly. Don't forget to ask about their training and certifications. Yeah, did they get formal training from reputable places? Are they part of any professional organizations? Yeah, those credentials are important. It shows they're serious about what they do and that they follow ethical guidelines. What about their communication style?
That's super important. Pay close attention to that during the interview. You want someone who's empathetic, a good listener, someone who can build rapport with families who are grieving.
It's a tough time for them, so being able to connect with people on a personal level is crucial.
You said it. You should also ask about how they go about personalizing the service. How do they gather information from families? How do they craft a meaningful story? How do they handle special requests?
We want to make sure their approach to personalization aligns with the funeral home's values.
Right. And it's a good time to talk about the practical stuff too.
Yeah.
Their availability, their fees, how they handle scheduling and communication.
Yeah, we need to make sure it'll work logistically, that we're on the same page about expectations and how things will run.
Absolutely. And lastly, don't forget to ask about their values and beliefs, about what it means to be a funeral celebrant. What do they think the purpose of a funeral service is? How do they see their role in supporting families?
It's all about finding someone who shares our vision and who we feel good about working with in the long run.
Someone who feels like a true part of the team.
So after the interviews are done and we've thought about our options, how do we actually decide?
Trust your gut. Go with the celebrant, who you feel a connection with, and who you think will be a valuable asset to your team.
It's about finding someone we can trust, communicate openly with, and who will represent the funeral home, well, with professionalism and compassion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once you've found that person, the next step is to figure out how to make their services part of how the funeral home operates.
Okay, so that's where the real work starts. How do we make this integration successful?
The first thing is to educate your staff about what a celebrant does and why it's a good thing. Get everyone on board and make sure they understand how it all works.
Right. We want everyone to be comfortable and informed so they can support families who choose this option.
Exactly. Give them training materials, maybe have a workshop, or even have the celebrant talk to the team about their approach.
The more prepared everyone is, the better. And we also need to update our marketing materials to include this new service.
For sure. Add information about celebrant services to your website, brochures, any kind of promotional stuff. Let families know it's an option and how it can make their loved one's service more personal.
It's all about giving families choices and empowering them to make decisions that feel right for them.
And once a family decides to work with a celebrant, clear communication is so important.
Oh, yeah. Communication is key. We want to make sure everything goes smoothly for the family. That takes collaboration and open communication between the family, the celebrant, and our staff.
Absolutely. Regular meetings, shared calendars, open lines of communication, that can really help prevent any mix-ups or problems along the way.
And we should support both the celebrant and the family throughout the whole planning process. We're the funeral experts, so we can help them with the logistics, etiquette, anything they need.
That's about being there for them, a resource and a support system.
And we have to remember that this is a process. It's going to evolve. We should regularly ask families who have used celebrant services for feedback, what's working well, what we can do better.
You're right. Continuous improvement is so important. We want to offer the best service possible and meet the changing needs of the families we work with.
By taking these steps and working together, we can create a really great partnership with a celebrant, one that benefits both the funeral home and the families.
It's about recognizing the value of personalization, expanding our services, and ultimately helping families say goodbye to their loved ones in a meaningful and memorable way. What potential challenges do you see in working with celebrants?
I think managing expectations is going to be important. We'll need to be clear with families about what a celebrant can and can't do and what the process looks like.
Yeah, setting realistic expectations from the start is crucial. That way there are no surprises down the road.
Exactly. Another challenge might be dealing with resistance from within. You know, some staff members might be hesitant about this new approach, especially those who are used to doing things the traditional way.
Change can be tough,
Yeah.
but I think with the right education and open communication, we can address those concerns and help everyone see the value in this partnership.
I agree. And of course, finding the right celebrant is key.
Right.
Someone who's not just skilled and experienced, but also a good fit for our funeral home's culture and values.
Finding the right fit is so important for any partnership to work.
Once we have a celebrant on board, communication and collaboration are going to be essential. We need to be on the same page and work together smoothly.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about the legal and ethical side of things. We need to make sure we're following all the rules and regulations, especially when it comes to sensitive information and respecting the deceased's wishes.
We got to be careful and thorough. We need to protect everyone involved.
How do you think this partnership might change the way you approach your work as a funeral director?
You know, it's really made me think we can be more creative and personalize our approach. We don't have to be stuck in the old ways of doing things.
So you're feeling inspired to break free from those traditions and be more flexible.
Definitely. Working with a celebrant feels like having another tool to help families create a really meaningful and unique experience.
It's about expanding our understanding of what a funeral service can be.
Yes, and not just the service itself, but the whole process of working with the family. A celebrant can help them have those tough conversations, process their grief, and create a tribute that feels real and healing.
It's about offering a more complete and personal approach to funeral care.
I think having celebrant services could be a game changer for us. It could change how we connect with families and help us create better experiences for everyone.
That's a beautiful thought. It really shows the power of innovation and collaboration in this industry.
I'm excited to see where this all goes.
You know, we've talked a lot about like the nuts and bolts of working with celebrants, but in this last part, I want to zoom out a bit. What do you think this whole trend of personalized funerals says about how we're dealing with death and grief as a society?
That's a good question. I think it shows that we're really into individuality and being genuine these days. You know, we're moving away from those strict traditions and wanting to make things more personal in all parts of life, even death, and how we remember people.
Like we're taking control of these rituals, making them our own, instead of just doing what's always been done.
Right. We want funerals that really show who the person was, not just some generic ceremony that feels kind of empty.
And I think that wanting things to be real goes beyond just the service itself. It's about the whole experience of grief and mourning. People are looking for ways to grieve that feel true to them, not just doing what they're supposed to do.
It's about finding a way to connect with their grief and heal in a way that makes sense to them personally.
And that's where I think celebrants can really make a difference. They bring that empathy and personalization that's so important when you're dealing with loss.
Yeah, they're not just there to lead the ceremony. They're helping families go through the process of remembering and healing in a way that honors the person and their story.
And they do it without pushing any particular beliefs. It's about creating a space where families can grieve and celebrate their loved one in whatever way feels right for them.
I think that's what makes this partnership so interesting. It's about giving families the power to create a goodbye that truly reflects their loved one's life and who they were. Recognizing that everyone grieves differently.
Each family deserves a service that fits their needs and helps them find comfort and meaning in their own way. It's been great talking about this with you. It seems like working with celebrants is more than just a passing fad. It's a real change in how we approach death and grieving.
Yeah, I agree. It's about moving towards a way of doing funerals that's more compassionate, more personal, and more focused on the people involved. And it shows how important stories, rituals, and connection are when we're dealing with loss.
This has given me a lot to think about, and I'm really curious to see how this all develops in the funeral industry.
Me too. It's clear that this is something that's growing, and it could really change how we say goodbye to our loved ones.
Well, it looks like we've come to the end of our look at funeral celebrants. We've covered a lot, from the practical parts of working with them to the bigger cultural changes that are making this happen.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting and thought-provoking conversation.
We hope this has given you a new way of thinking about the role celebrants can play in making funeral services more personal and meaningful.
And maybe it's even inspired you to think about offering these services in your own work.
Until next time, remember to be open to new ideas, to adapt to the changing needs of the families you work with, and to always try to create experiences that are compassionate and meaningful for those who are going through loss.